What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show, Season 3, Episode 22. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Haverlack. Mark, last week was trade deadline on Friday. Man, was that a fucking snooze fest, I'll be honest. Not many trades. It kind of picked up around 3 o'clock and after the 3 o'clock deadline with all those kind of trades just drizzling in. But up until, like when I woke up ready, pumped to watch it, and it seemed like nothing was going on. And yeah, dude, it was kind of a snooze fest. Mark, before we get into all of that, though, how was your last weekend?
Yeah, not too bad, dude. I really felt like the GMs this year put the dead in deadline. It felt like it sort of felt like there was like a mini trade deadline. Maybe Wednesday night we had a couple decent sized moves go down. I was happy we started to get stuff trickling in near the end, like the Braden Shen deal, and then obviously Kadri went over to Colorado. So I mean, there was some trades, but it was really dead for the most part. I remember I even saw you, and I was like, I swear there's been more contract extensions today than there were trades by, I think it was 1 o'clock. So I've been doing all right, dude, for the most part. Pretty pumped here for the last stretch here near the playoffs because it's going to be a really exciting last month.
Mark, so I want to ask you something about the trade deadline because we've already briefly talked about here how it was a pretty slow one, especially when you look back at the last couple of years where it's felt like there's been stars on the move and a lot of trades, right? So my first question for you is, what do you think kind of happened here, and does the NHL need to maybe change anything going forward? Because I know there was a lot of talk about like 40% of the league has no move clauses, and that kind of takes into effect. Same thing with the salary cap for the playoffs, like that starting up this season, and that might have been part of the reason why we didn't see as many trades. Do you think the NHL kind of needs to look at this?
Yeah, I think so a bit. I just don't know if anything really is going to get done maybe before next year. One other thing that I think had a huge part in it too was taking out the double retention in trades. I think we probably could have seen a couple more trades. Like, I'm even curious if like Bobrovsky would have been moved if that was a possibility, right? Like, you get his salary down to $2.5 million. I think a lot of teams would be very interested in taking Bobrovsky on. So I think definitely part of it, considering like LTIR, only a couple teams could really utilize it fully, like with Dallas, and they didn't even really utilize all of it, but they could have, right? In the sense of like, you can put a guy on LTIR now, but if they're coming back for the playoffs, like you can't really use that full cap hit if they have a really large salary, right? So I think that 100% has to do with it. I just don't, and I'm not convinced that something's going to change by next year. I wonder if we're going to see some trades that are even earlier at this point. I saw something interesting about the double retention thing. I don't really know if GMs would be that interested in it, but like, imagine you knew you were going to be a seller at the deadline and you had a guy that had a hefty salary, and you could almost make a trade with a team that has another guy that they might be willing to move out. And like almost in November, you're like, let's retain half on both of these, and then we can like flip them at the deadline again for another half, you know what I mean, and potentially get more. But I mean, to find the right trading partner to do that, I feel like would be kind of a one-off and maybe very difficult. And even if it does happen, it's probably not going to happen consistently, but GMs definitely need to be a lot more strategic. And I also feel like it went from almost being a buyer's market to a seller's market pretty fast.
Yeah,
It felt like. And I felt for the most part it was a seller's market. There was a few trades here and there where I was like, man, I think they probably could have got a little bit more back considering what the market value is right now. But I'll be honest, I don't really see a whole lot changing for next year.
Yeah, to me, I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot that will change, and I don't think the NHL really needs to do anything. The one thing that I'd say though that maybe should be looked into a little bit is all these no move clauses going to players, right? It's like if I was NHL GM sitting around right now, I'd be like, maybe we should kind of dial back a little bit on giving no move clauses to pretty much half the team, right? Because then it's like anybody that is effective and would be a guy that is a trade target come the deadline, it's like all those guys have no move clauses, and it makes it a whole lot harder to trade them. And then all the guys that don't have no move clauses, like most of those players, NHL teams don't really have super high up on their trade boards, right? So it is a bit weird that way. Like, I don't think the NHL needs to put any type of rule in, because I know there's been a lot of people online saying like, oh, you should only have a maximum of 5 slots for for no move clauses for guys on your team. Like, look, I don't think the NHL needs to do that or step in here at all, but I do think the GMs will maybe look at this and be like, yeah, maybe we should kind of dial back a little bit on all these clauses that we're handing out. Mark, I want to start to talk about some of the winners and losers of the deadline and some of the trades we saw. So, looking at the buyer's perspective, teams that were going into the deadline as buyers and ended up being buyers, who do you say your top three winners were out of those buyers?
Yeah, I think one team you got to put right near the top, regardless if you have them in the number one slot or not, is Colorado. Like they did a
Yeah.
lot to make their team better, and I don't necessarily think that they like overpaid a ton. I think the Leafs maybe got a little bit better than them in that deal for Nick Waugh. And I do wonder if Colorado knew that Kadri would have been available yesterday, eventually, if they would have ended up making that deal or not. But regardless, he's a really solid player. He's won the Stanley Cup. He was a fourth line center for Vegas when they won a couple of years ago. And I think that he's going to slot in really nicely. And he kind of has that little bit edge to his game in the playoffs, which is going to help them out. So I really like Colorado, even though they gave up like two firsts, 2 seconds, roster player, like, and pretty much sacrifice their entire future. Like their windows now, right? Like even
Yeah.
though McKinnon and Makar are still not really old, it's like they've got a really good team right now. And when you're that good, it's those draft picks don't really mean anything, right? Like it's going to take years and years to develop. Even like a guy like Callum Ritchie, dude. Like that guy probably could have made a difference for their team, and I think he's going to make a difference for the Avalanche. But he's probably not going to be able to get to that level quick enough that they want. Right, like they prefer to
Yeah.
have a guy like Brock Nelson come in last year and be able to help guide them to a Stanley Cup. So I really like Colorado a lot. I don't know if you necessarily have them within your top three in like a buyer's market, but I think they did a really good job and kind of cemented themselves at least roster wise that they're a lot better than a lot of teams heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, for me, I had Colorado in my top three for winners out of the buyers. As you mentioned, getting Kadri, getting Nick Wall, like, look, their depth up the center ice is probably the best in the NHL right now by an absolute mile, right? So when you're able to have the centerman that they have, especially the top three with Nate Dogg, Brock Nelson, Nazem Kadri, man, are they poised to go on a real playoff push here. So I have them as my number one winner out of the buyers. Mark, who do you have at your number two spot or another winner here?
Yeah. My number two spot, they didn't really do a whole lot, but I'm actually going to put Anaheim. I
Yeah.
love the John Carlson move. We've been talking about them getting a better right side. It feels like all season long. Like I like Truba, I like Gudis. None of them really have that kind of top tier game anymore, I would say, though, at this point. Even though they're both having pretty solid seasons, and Truba's definitely rejuvenated his game a little bit since being traded from the Rangers. I just think this John Carlson fit, man, he's going to go in. He's having a really great season right now. There's probably a really high likelihood, if he likes it there, that he's going to end up re-signing. You do give up a first-round pick and a third-round pick, but honestly, dude, I think it's worth it. Like, why does Anaheim need to draft at 18 to 25 this year, dude? Like, they already have a good young core. You got Roger McQueen on the way. Like, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily, I'm not necessarily that scared to not pick in the first round this year. And people are saying they might not make the playoffs. It's like, okay, but they're also winning their division right now. Like, the West is crazy. Like, I think that considering their situation and that their path to, let's say, the conference finals might even be a little bit easier, I really like this move, dude. Like, they didn't give up any of their prospects. Like, it's still a shot at the dartboard, right? Like, I just think this
Yeah.
John Carlson move, he could fit in like a glove, to be honest.
Yeah, I love the what the Ducks did here for the trade deadline, getting Carlson, as you mentioned. Like we've been talking on this podcast for the last season or so, saying they really do need a right hand shot defenseman, especially more of a veteran guy to play with one of these younger defensemen who plays on the hand side. And look, they got that in John Carlson, right? I think the big next step for them is can they re-sign him? Because I know there's a lot of rumors that Carlson might do the oh, I'll go play in your little playoff push here and I'll go back and sign with the Caps in the summer. So I am interested to keep an eye on that, but I really did like that move for Anaheim. I will say the one thing that I found super weird, Mark, is did you see the clip of John Carlson at his like at his first practice with the Ducks or no?
No, I did not. I only saw a clip of him when he was getting on the plane yesterday, I believe.
So the Bauer helmet that he wears, the one that they don't make anymore, I forget what it's called. I think it's like the 4500, something like that. He couldn't get one in orange, I guess, or it's like something went on where they couldn't get one for his first practice, so he had to go to the new helmet. And I just thought it was weird, man. It looked weird seeing John Carlson wearing one of those new helmets and not the classic Bauer that has worn his entire career.
Well, if
So
he still wants one, I've got a black 4500 that I think expired a couple of years ago, and he could probably just spray paint that orange
yeah,
and get
just
away
spray
with
paint
that
it
for the
orange.
rest of the season.
Yeah, for me, I liked what Anaheim did a fair bit. I'm gonna go a different route here and just choose a different team just to kind of spread the love around a little bit here. I kind of liked what Columbus did here, bringing in Connor Garland at the trade deadline. Look, it's like they're not guaranteed a playoff spot. They're kind of just on the outside looking in right now, but they have been very good since the NHL's been back for the Olympics, right? And you get Connor Garland. What do you give up? You give up a second, a third, right? So even if you do miss the playoffs this year, you're still holding on to that first round pick. And the other thing is Connor Garland's extension hasn't even kicked in yet. It doesn't kick until next season. So not only do you get Connor Garland for right now, but you get him for 6 more years after this at a pretty manageable cap hit of $6 million, right? So he's a guy that right now can play in their top six. And as he ages a little bit, and some of these younger players that they have are prospects that aren't quite yet in the NHL, um, as they get there, Connor Garland can slide down maybe to a third line role, and at the cap hit, I'm perfectly fine with that. So I love what Columbus did here. I'm going to give them a little bit of love as a buying winner. Mark, third team, who do you have?
You stole mine, dude. I didn't really think you were going to pick Columbus. And the one thing I want to mention about Columbus, too, I didn't realize, and I don't really know if this is a benefit or not. Connor Garland is 5'10". Did you know Columbus doesn't have a forward on their team besides Connor Garland that's under 6'1"? They're a pretty big, mean
That's kind of
team. And honestly,
surprising.
even though Garland is a younger guy, like a smaller guy, he doesn't necessarily play like it, right? Like he's a
Yeah.
very grindy player. I agree. I actually love this move for Columbus. You're barely giving up anything, and you get a guy that's under cost control. And the one thing I'll say about Connor Garland, it's like Columbus has got a lot of skill, and they're going to keep getting better and better. Like Connor Garland will easily accept a third line role. And I think that's probably
Yeah.
what he's going to end up being eventually. But in a couple of years, like people are saying, oh, I don't love this extension and whatever. Dude, I think this is totally fine. I honestly,
Yeah.
I think he's having a bit of a down year. I mean, a lot of guys in Vancouver are. Like if he can get back up to 50, 55 points, like this is a home run for the Columbus Blue Jackets. My third team I'll go with, just to change it up a little bit. I really like Utah bringing in Uyghur. The more I think about it, like I think you guys did get a good return for him. The 3 seconds, it's three
Yeah.
shots of the dartboard. But just from Utah's perspective, they get a defenseman that can play a top pairing role. Sergachev is already there as well, and I think that he can be really good there. And he's under cost control for the next, I think, 4 years at a really manageable cap hit. And I think even a change of scenery could help him a little bit. You obviously watch him a ton in Calgary. My personal opinion is that I don't think we're getting the best hockey out of Mackenzie Weegar this season that we have the last couple of years. I think he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife on defense in accordance to he can score goals, he can put up some points. It's not going to be high-end points, but he's also really solid defensively, blocks shots, he hits, and he's a leader. I love Mackenzie Weegar. I was a little bit surprised at the 3 seconds at first, but the more I thought about it, you're getting a pretty solid prospect back. You're getting 2 second-round picks that are almost in the first round anyway. But from Utah's perspective, dude, I'm making this trade every day of the week because you get to upgrade on your decor for a guy that's under cost control. The prospect, Jonathan Costanza, is a third-round pick who's having a really solid year. But funny enough, a week before the trade deadline, apparently he was telling some people that he wasn't even too sure if he was going to sign with Utah
Yeah. I saw
because
that.
he didn't know if he was going to have a path to the NHL. Now you guys got him and he's got more of a path. It's kind of a win-win situation, right? I really like what Utah did. They didn't sacrifice their first-round pick. They're in that wild card 1 spot right now. And I know we've sort of talked about it with if it's Vegas, oh my God, could they beat out Vegas? I honestly think at this point, even if it's Vegas, Anaheim, or Edmonton, maybe they won't win the series, but I don't think I'm walking into that series saying Utah's getting blown out. So the way I'm seeing it is they could have a path to get to the conference finals here, and I think this addition was really good for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love what they did going out and getting Mackenzie Weegar. He's a right-hand shot defenseman, and you like Utah, it kind of felt that they really lack that, right? There's a lot of talk about Sean Dursey, and maybe Utah will flip Sean Dursey at some point to get an upgrade there on that right hand side. And they didn't even have to do it, right? They just send out some draft capital that they've stocked up on throughout the
None of their
years.
top
And
prospects went out the door either.
yeah, none of their top prospects. And you go and you get that number one pairing right hand shot defenseman. And Mackenzie Weegar, like he can play the second power play for them if he needs to, even if he needs to play on the first power play, like if Sergachev is maybe not playing great or something, he can do that as well, right? So you kind of are getting the Swiss Army knife there, as you mentioned, Mark. So I do like what Utah did a fair bit as well. For me, Mark, I think my third winner out of the buyers, I'm kind of leaning towards Minnesota. Look, when you look at Colorado and what they did, it's hard to say that Minnesota won trade deadline in the same way Colorado did, especially considering they play in the same division and they're likely going to meet at some point in the playoffs, right? But I think when you look at what Bill Guerin did and what you brought into Minnesota, they got right. It starts with let's start with Nick Foligno. You're pairing up the brothers. You're getting a guy who's been on playoff runs, who's eager to win right now. Great leader, right? He was the captain of the Chicago Blackhawks, and he's also a big physical forward, right? This is a guy that can play in your bottom six, add more grit to this Minnesota Wild team who already has a lot of big feisty forwards, right? So in the playoffs, if I'm playing the Minnesota Wild and I'm a defenseman, every time I'm going back to get the puck on my own end, man, it's gonna fucking suck having one of these big forwards running you through the end wall, right? And then the other move that they made that I was kind of a fan of was bringing in Bobby Brink and letting go of David Jiricek, right? Minnesota, they're in win now mode. You look at their decor, there's an argument that after bringing in Quinn Hughes, they probably got the best decor in the entire NHL. Adam Jiricek, it was like, what was his path to the NHL? Kind of hard to see one. He's not making an impact right now. You bring in Bobby Brink, he's a guy that can play in your middle six, likely your second line, and add a little bit of skill there and kind of take the load off the Kirill Kaprizovs and the Matt Boldies and the Joel Eriksson Ek and can kind of have some of that secondary scoring, right? So I do like what Bill Guerin did here at this trade deadline. Look, when you compare it to the Colorado Avalanche, it is kind of hard to say that Minnesota had a better trade deadline, but I do think this is a team that is definitely better than they were a week ago after the moves they made.
I think they're better than they are a week ago, but I can't sit here and say I'm not worried about their center depth. Like I'm really
Yeah,
worried about them in the playoffs, and maybe they can win a round with it. But I have a hard time believing that this is a center core that's going to lead them to the Stanley Cup this year. Like I just think if Ryan Hartman is in your top six, like that's a little bit of a problem. Like, don't you think? Like, as much as the Quinn Hughes trade was worth it, and I would have done it every day of the week, like you lost a quality center in Marco Rossi, right? And you haven't replaced that. So I think that I was kind of waiting for something to drop with them at the
yeah.
deadline. Now, like, do you think it's fine and they shouldn't have just like risked the future like more than they already have? Like, I just think they kind of put themselves in this position where it's like it's not necessarily win now, but it's like their window's more open now. And I
Yeah.
still just don't necessarily know if they're good enough to win because of that center depth. And it's just like, if it really was like for Trocheck, like a prospect and like maybe another roster player, it's like why didn't they just do it? Like I when I saw the ask for Trocheck, I was kind of like, I don't really think this is that insane. Like he's on a really good contract for 3 more years, a guy who can play in the top 6. Like I think I was just really surprised that he didn't get dealt the deadline, considering there's obviously
Yeah.
insane prices out there for a lot of players, but it's not that the Trocheck price wasn't high. It was more that I think I was just surprised the team didn't step up to the plate and do it. And I thought Minnesota probably would have been a prime place for him to go. And I would have been a lot more higher on them if they ended up with like a Robert Thomas or a Ryan O'Reilly or him,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just like with Danila Yurov and Hartman in the middle 6 at center it's just not sitting right with me. And I totally agree with you that they're going to be banging bodies and they're going to be hard to play against. And Michael McCarron, I mean, You can say all you want if you don't think he's worth a second round pick, but I think he's going to make a difference on their team. Like, they're not going to be an easy out by any means, but I don't necessarily. I would be shocked if this team won the Stanley Cup with that center depth.
See, I would be surprised as well, but more where I'm looking at it for Utah is I think the moves they made compared to some of the other moves around the league that was made, I think it did suit them well. Look, do I still think they're lacking a bit up the center of the ice? Oh, without a doubt. I would have loved to see them go out and get Trocheck, but I think the key thing that you kind of mentioned there was they are kind of in that win now mode, but their core is still fairly young, and unless Quinn Hughes just walks, which who knows what's
Hear
going to
me
happen
out.
there.
Hear
Like
me
they
out
are going
on
to have
this,
another
though.
run here, right?
Hear me out on this, okay? My thought is more, okay, so Hughes comes over, right? And um, it's a shock because people are like, everyone thinks it's going to be New Jersey because of his brothers. And it's almost like you don't know if you're going to keep him. You still don't know, right? Realistically,
Yeah.
you don't know. But of what I will guess as a person and a fan is like, they've been really good since he's been there. He seems like he likes it there. I know it's sort of not within Minnesota, but I mean, he also just won a gold medal with his GM, right?
Yeah.
If I had to take a guess right now, honestly, I think he's re-signing. I do.
Yeah, same.
So, but in the way I'm thinking about it though, too, is that okay? That number is going to be pretty fucking big. Like, let's say my guess is going to be anywhere from 13 to 16. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly. Probably the same with Makar. So is it not worth overpaying a little bit for a guy like Vinny Trocheck that you know is going to be a top six center for you for a couple of years on a really cost controlled contract, considering you're going to have to give a shit ton of money allocated to Kaprizov and Hughes. So that's the way I'm seeing it, is like, it's not that they can't go out and attract a first line center to come sign with them or whatever, but the price, the cap hit that you're going to have to take on for that is going to be insane. So the way I'm looking at it is like, why don't you bring a cheap top six center in, even if you have to pay an extra second round pick and a fucking prospect or whatever? Like, is it not worth it more to have him on a really good contract, considering like, oh my God, we're going to have to, Quinn Hughes is going to go from 7.8 to possibly double that, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I'm looking at it, as they had such a hard time, and it wasn't Guerin's fault that they had to deal with this Parise and Suter shit, right, with the buyout. So why wouldn't they try to acquire a guy on a really good cap hit, like under market value? Like, you can argue in 2 years from now, Vincent Trocheck might be a freaking $8 to $9 million centerman, the way the cap is going up if he's still second line center, right? That was just more my thinking about this whole situation, was why didn't they try to bring in a guy on a really great contract? You know what I mean? Considering that they're going to have to allocate even more money to a superstar next year, possibly.
Seeing what I do wonder is I do wonder if Bill Guerin's going to try to wait to the summer to make one of these moves and maybe see if there's a bit more on the market. Because I'll be honest, like centerman wise, it didn't feel like there was like a whole lot of trade targets for Utah, right? Or sorry, not Utah, the Minnesota Wild. It kind of felt like it was like they're either going to get Trocheck or they're not going to do anything, right? Like Kadri, he didn't really seem like a great fit there. Same thing with Shen.
I think
It's like,
Robert Thomas, it's like it's within division, and I don't think they really wanted to do that, the Blues. So I mean,
yeah,
I kind of get what you're saying, but I'm more just thinking of it differently, like just the cap going forward. You know what I mean? And I know it's going up, like, and it's going up a lot, but that doesn't mean that having two guys for $35 million potentially combined is going to be beneficial, right? And you need to kind of work around the edges and have guys like Boldy's on a great fucking contract. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
See, I almost think it's one of those things where I think Bill Guerin almost wants to do a move bigger than that. And I think he might be looking at it saying, like, I don't want to do this trade deadline. I want to wait until the summer when there's more options, more flexibility, and really make another move then, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking that Bill Guerin's going to do. Hey, maybe I'm wrong, but I guess we'll see in a couple months. Moving on to the sellers, Mark. There's a decent amount of sellers. Who are your top three winners out of the sellers?
Okay, so I might be on the minority of this. I actually think the Washington Capitals won the trade deadline in the
Yeah,
seller's market.
they got some great picks back.
The John Carlson move came out of nowhere, but I mean, the way I'm looking at it too is like, bro, they got a first and a third for a 36-year-old defenseman. Take the whole his career in Washington out of it. Like, they got a great return for him. And then I'm also looking at it like they trade Nick Dowd, who's a fourth line center, in a very good one, don't get me wrong, for a second and third round pick. But then you're also being sort of like a mini buyer in trying to fill these holes with less value players because you're still in the playoff race. And I think one of the reasons why I like this for Washington is a lot of people forget a couple years ago, Washington sold at the deadline and then got in the playoffs. At the deadline a couple years ago, they traded Joel Edmondson to the Leafs. They traded Anthony Mantha, I believe, was to Vegas, and they traded Evgeny Kuznetsov to Carolina. And they were like right at the playoffs, and everyone was like, what the hell is going on? And they ended up making the playoffs in the last game of the year. So I think that they see that they're not, even if they get in, they're probably not going to go far. It just hasn't really been their year. And I mean, a lot of guys had career years last year. But I like what they did in accordance to asset management. Like, you get a first, a second, a third, a decent goalie prospect, and you're sending out a fourth line center and a good top pairing defenseman and a couple mid-round picks. Like, I really like the asset management part because it's like, if they don't make the playoffs, it makes sense. They sold, they got assets. But if you do make the playoffs, it's like a plus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you kind of stock the cupboards for the next, I mean, a first, a second, and third. I know they're all not immediately, but you can still obviously go out and even trade them for players if you decide to do so too. And the one thing about the Caps, dude, is like they've been doing some really good drafting recently. Like Ryan Leonard in the first round, Cole Hudson in the second round, Alexei Protas's brother Ilya in the third round, who's having a hell of a season in the AHL this year. So I don't know if it's more just I'm very confident in Washington's staff that they're going to do the right things with these picks, but I just more am seeing it like they're not going to make the playoffs, most likely, I feel at this point. It's probably better to sell off some assets, but you also brought in some legitimate NHL players that can help you for the rest of the season and still gives your room like a fighting chance of like we can still get in, you know?
Yeah. I do like what Washington did a fair bit here. It does suck to see Ovi and his reaction to Carlson getting dealt because, look, that looked kind of absolutely heartbreaking for him and arguably the saddest I've seen Ovi in his entire career. But I do like what Washington did here on kind of this
I
another
want to
retooling phase.
I want to ask you one thing before I move on from Washington. So, with these moves they made, do you believe Ovi's done or he's coming back? If you had to guess right now.
It's tough, man.
My thought, I can't see. I think he told them that he's coming back because I think that they want to like, they're almost like, okay, if he's coming back, we're not going to win this year. Let's try to set him up better for next year. I don't think he's going out like this. That's just the way I'm looking at this right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I kind of think he's coming back. The one thing I saw online, which I don't necessarily agree with, was some people were saying they think that Ovi said he wants to come back for next year, but management in Washington doesn't want him to come back and they kind of want to move on to life after Ovi. So they traded Carlson and made some of the moves that they made so Ovi would say he's not coming back. You know what I mean? Because like I have seen that, but look, I don't think that happened. I like at the end of the day, I do think Ovi is likely going to come back for one more year. Look, I think the guy he deserves a farewell tour, and I think we should give it to him, right? So come back for one more season, get your farewell tour, pardon me, and then go back to Russia. For me, Mark, the number one team I want to mention as a winner for the Sellers, it's the St. Louis Blues, dude. Look, this was a team that was rumored to get rid of Robert Thomas. And hey, you don't even get rid of Robert Thomas and you're bringing in 2 firsts and 2 thirds in this year's draft. And what did you give up? You gave up Justin Falk and you gave up Braden Shen, right? Like when you look at the players that they had go out the door and when you look at the assets that they got back, I think they did an absolutely phenomenal job here, man. You can argue you can make a decent argument that out of all the sellers over this entire deadline, they might have gotten the best picks back. I love what St. Louis did here. I think Doug Armstrong did a good job kind of setting up Steen to take over for next season, right? And kind of come in and have a decent amount of picks and assets here. And look, I don't think St. Louis is done. I see them doing more in the summer, but I think St. Louis put themselves in a pretty decent spot here to get things kicked off here in this rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, they did have a really good deadline. Like, I like both their trades. I just am so indifferent about the whole Parayko situation and how that got out, and before he's even like asked to basically waive his no trade.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not necessarily on Doug Armstrong specifically, right? Like, you don't know exactly what happened, but I just felt like that whole situation was very unprofessional because it now, I mean, like the amount of times that probably actually happens and it doesn't get out in public is probably way more than we think, right? And it's just that
Yeah.
this situation gets out to public, and man, all I've been hearing from guys that have played with him is like, they're like, I just can't believe it happened to this guy, because he's like apparently the nicest guy in the world. And like he even said a couple days ago, he's like, man, I like take like all day to decide on like what I'm gonna eat. Like he's like, I can't make like a life-changing decision like this so fast, right? So I just think it does suck that that came out and he didn't move, and now it's kind of out that he wants to move. And also, even from the Buffalo side, dude, I think it kind of sucks a little bit for Radim Murtka to know that his like name's out there and he was just about to get
Yeah.
realistically get traded and he was just drafted by Buffalo. Like I'm not super high on Radim Murtka as a prospect, but that just sucks for a young player that's trying to develop. Now, I really like the Blues deadline too, and I agree with you. They got really good picks. The one thing I will say, though, is I don't know if this matters a whole lot, but I felt like, and they should allocate more time into these big trades, but I also felt like that they had some assets lower in their lineup that they could have traded. Like, to be honest with you, I had Alexei Toropchenko at number 6 on my trade board. I thought there was no chance in hell he was going to be a Blue after the deadline. He's a 6'6" fourth line forward who makes $1.5 million. I almost thought of it like the Michael McCarron thing, even though he's not a center. I'm like, this guy's a fucking bully. He's going to torment people in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you go out? You probably could have even got like a third round pick for the guy. I was looking at him. I was looking at Oscar Sundqvist maybe for a team for center depth. So I know I'm just kind of beating around the bush and it doesn't really matter in the sense they're probably getting like a third and fourth round pick. But if they wanted to really utilize everything and blow it up, I probably would have just made those moves as well. But I think their time was just so focused on, oh my God, the Parayko thing. And then it was like, and then Robert Thomas is heating up. And then it's like, and then Braden Shen again. And then it's like at the deadline, it's Justin Falk, right? So I don't know if they necessarily had a whole lot of time to make and decide on those other players, but that's just one thing that I would have thought that they would have done.
Yeah, there definitely was a bit more in their lineup they probably could have moved on from. I think the issue with this trade deadline that we really saw was for guys like for those bottom six forwards, like there really wasn't much of a market out there, right? Like you look at guys in the bottom six who got moved. First of all, it wasn't a crazy amount. And then for the guys that did get
You're
moved,
totally right, dude. Like now that you say that, like a lot of
yeah,
there were some for sure. Like I'm just going through my list here, like Sam Carrick. I mean, David
David
Perron's kind of like
Kampf.
a middle. David Camp, David Perron, like Scott Lawton got moved, like Nick Delorier got moved for a seventh. Like a couple were in like cap dumps, like Mangiapane. But yeah, you're kind of right. Like I feel like the market for it was just a bit too much. Like even last year, it was like Brandon Tanev went for like a second round pick. And I'm
Yeah,
just
you know
like,
what I
what
mean?
the fuck? Like what the fuck is going on? I think some teams were just like, let's just ride out our depth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, why give anything up? And that's where I think maybe that the whole salary cap for the playoff maybe comes up into effect where it's like you can't you can't bring in as much of those depth guys because it's harder to fit them all into the cap for the playoffs, right? And I think that's maybe where it hurts the trades a little bit. Mark, moving on to your next winner of the sellers, who do you have?
Yeah, I probably would have went with St. Louis on number 2, but I think I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go with Nashville. I want to give them a little bit of credit. Barry Trotz is leaving, right? And I feel like it took him to retire to make a couple of good trades, but I think that they went the right route, is what I'm going to say, right? Like they're right by the playoffs. You talk about guys within the room, they weren't happy with Cole Smith going and Michael McCarron going. See the Cole Smith situation? That was so weird. The guy went on the ice, played 3 seconds, got taken off, and got told he was traded, but he still like sat on the bench the rest of the game. Bizarre situation, dude, especially for the coach. 3 seconds in, it's like, yep, you're down to 11 forwards now. Like, just crazy how that happened. But the way I'm looking at it is like they got a third, a second. Sorry, they got a second, 2/3, a fifth, and a D prospect for McCarron, Cole Smith, Nick Blankenberg, and Michael Bunting.
Yeah, that's pretty
Like,
good.
you talked about how depth didn't really get moved. Well, depth got moved from Nashville. The only
Yeah.
trade I really looked at and was like, maybe you could have got a little bit more was I was surprised Bunting only went for a third considering the market. And I think he's a pretty solid player that can put up 40 points. And I think he actually could be very effective on Dallas's third line. So that was the only trade I sort of looked at and was like, you could have maybe got a little bit more, but still you got a third round pick. They overpaid for Michael McCarron. Honestly, I think Vegas overpaid for Cole Smith. Nick Blankenberg's a nice depth defenseman that, I mean, you just got an asset for. You're not going to re-sign him. So I just wanted to give Barry Trotz some flowers on his way out. And I think that it's not even just like the picks. It's more like not deciding to hold on to these guys and go for it when you're not going to win.
Yeah, I don't mind what Nashville did there because like it is tough for Nashville because the way their core group of players kind of talks about it, they do want to make a push here to get into the playoffs. So if you're Nashville, like you can't really buy considering where you're at in the standings, but you also can't completely self-farm because it's tough because a bunch of these guys don't really want you to. So they kind of had to sell off what they could there. And I think with what they did sell off, they get a decent amount of assets to come back in return here to help them out in the future. And then, hey, if things don't work out, you don't make the playoffs, maybe over the summer, that's where you move on from the O'Reillys and the Stamkos and Yossi, right? So who knows what they're going to do in the summer? But I think for right now, what Nashville did, it was some pretty tidy business. Mark, moving on to my biggest winner, actually probably my second biggest winner out of the sellers. I got the Calgary Flames. Look, I think it for the Flames, it's been a tough couple years where they haven't really picked a direction and it's kind of been stuck in the middle, right? Just missing out on the playoffs, not getting a great pick. And now with this trade deadline, not only did management, but also ownership, they picked a clear direction for this team to go, right? You get rid of Uyghur, who's your number one defenseman right now. You get rid of Kadri. Even if you want to call it a trade deadline move, it's not really a deadline move, but it happened this season. You get rid of Rasmus Anderson as well. And what do you get back? You get back 3 second-round picks in this year's draft from the Utah Mammoth. As you mentioned, one of them is going to be very early in that second round. Hey, it might even technically be the 32nd overall pick based on Ottawa losing their first round pick, right? So it could technically be you're picking 32nd and it's really a first rounder. And when I looked at to start off with that trade, my first reaction, we were texting about it. I hated that Mackenzie Weegar trade. I thought the Flames didn't get enough back. The more I sat there and I thought about it, the more I kind of liked that. Getting the 3 second-round picks, I almost would prefer that compared to getting the 27th overall pick in round one, right? It's like with the 3 seconds, it gives you a bit more flexibility because you can move. Hey, if you want to make all those picks, you make all those picks, and it's more chances at the lottery. If you don't want to make those picks and you maybe want to trade up, it's a bit easier to trade up because you have multiple picks there compared to the one, and you can kind of shimmy your way around and throw some in one deal, maybe some in another deal. So I do like that flexibility for the Calgary Flames there with the 3 second-round picks. And then sending off Kadri, look, there was big rumors the Flames ownership didn't want to retain at all in this Kadri deal. As soon as they brought in Strome, which I think is another great deal, you're only giving up a 7th-round pick there. But as soon as they brought in Strome, I kind of thought that Kadri might be on his way out. And what do you get? You get a first and a second-round pick. Not now, but in a couple of years, and hey, that's still going to help out. Like the rebuild's not going to take one season here for the Flames, so I do like the assets I got back here and finally picking a good direction to go. And Mark, I don't know if I think I texted you this or told you this. on the trade deadline. In the next three drafts, the Flames have 14 picks in the first two rounds, which I think is absolutely insane.
It's a lot of shots at the dartboard, right? Like they're all
Yeah.
not going to work out. Like even thinking about what I just went through with Montreal, like there's guys that I can name here in the second round that haven't turned out, and they're honestly barely even playing in the AHL right now. But some of them they do turn out, like your Lane Hudsons, right? Like, and I'm not saying you're going to get one of those in the draft, but I mean, if you even get a solid NHL player in the second round, like most second round picks don't really even last in the NHL long. There's some guys that are diamonds in the rough, and there's even guys in later rounds that turn out to be well. But it's basically like just the first round, dude. And even you can go back every single year and even look in the first round. There's guys that barely even play 100 games.
Yeah.
They're gone to Europe. 100 games are down in the AHL, right? So I just think having more shots at the dartboard is such a good thing. And sometimes there's even a guy that you're like, fuck it, we want that guy, and I'll package a couple of these to move up. You know what I mean? You have the luxury of
Yep.
doing that as well. So I really like the direction you guys are going in because look, the tree living era, like, I mean, he kept you guys relevant. And I mean, you guys were good that one year, went to the second round. It was unfortunate. But the one thing I will say is I thought he did some pretty bad drafting, at least later on. And I think that Conroy's really turned that around. Like, I know a lot of these guys
Yeah,
that
without a
me and you
doubt.
talk about a lot are either just starting to play in the NHL or haven't necessarily made it there yet. And it's not like all of them are going to turn out to possibly be as good as maybe you even think, but if some of them do, it's a plus, right? And it's just like having an abundance of guys that even could potentially be good. When a couple of them are really good, it's just such a good benefit, right? And your guys are going to have a ton of guys that have the potential to become NHL players down the road. And I think if you guys just stay patient, stick to the plan. The one thing I want to say too is I love that the game right after you guys go out and you're playing the best team in the Eastern Conference in Carolina, and you guys are going up 5-3 in the third period, and your GM is fist pumping. He's literally probably made some of the hardest decisions, definitely the hardest decisions he's had to make as a general manager so far. Trading away Nazem Kadri, Mackenzie Weegar, probably trying to convince ownership to retain some of his fucking salary and go through this rebuild. And he's still pumped up when you guys are winning hockey games, right? Like, he wants it to be fun. It's not just he wants it to be like, yeah, let's go out and lose every game. Because to be honest, dude, as much as you want that to get the first overall pick, just because you come last doesn't mean you're going to get the first overall pick. Look at the New York Islanders last year. And two, when you're losing every game, it's not fucking fun. Like, I'm not saying you guys are going to be the Buffalo Sabres, but look how fucking not fun that's been for them for years and years and years, and the amount of picks they get, right? Like, you want to win some hockey games and just have some good chemistry. Like, I love the Ryan Strome ad, dude. I still think Ryan Strome's a very quality hockey player. Like, I either see it as you might be able to go out and trade him at the deadline next year, but even if it's like maybe even wants to fucking stay and he's a good vet and signs a solid deal, like, you need those guys around, dude. I'm telling you, you can't just have a team of guys that are 29 and under and don't have guys that have played a lot of NHL games before, because it's not going to work out, dude, in the long run, right? Like, Buffalo has struggled so hard to get veterans to come in, right? Like, I don't want to say that's one of the reasons they didn't win before now, but it's like, you can't tell me that doesn't have something to do with it. When they're in tough situations, they don't have that voice in the room to mentor them, right? That's why I think a guy like Jason Zucker right now for them is like invaluable. Like, he's playing his heart out right now, and he's a guy that's been to the playoffs before, played with really good players before. He knows what it takes to win, right? So with you guys, I love the moves you made. I knew Nazem Kadri was getting traded the second that Ryan Strome trade
Yeah.
came in.
Mark, any other winners of the sellers that you want to mention or no?
The one other team I would say, like, I mean, they wouldn't be my third team, but I'll take them as my third team. I actually like Winnipeg, what they did, man. Look, I'm not saying that Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn can't help Buffalo, because I think it actually, those are two positions that they could probably improve on the back end, is a little bit more sandpaper. But the way I'm looking at this at the end of the day, and you can totally disagree with me on this if you want, I think Buffalo just got a depth defenseman. Isaac Rosen's a mid first round pick. I sort of envision him as a middle six forward. They got a second, a fourth, and a seventh for a number 6 defenseman, a number 7 defenseman, and a number 13 forward. That's just the way I'm looking at it, because I like Logan Stanley in the sense, like, I think Logan Stanley's a number 6 defenseman that's having a career year, and I think he's honestly going to go down to normal this year. And I know people were saying they should keep him because they don't get a lot of good players. You know what I mean? They don't attract a lot of good players. But the way I'm seeing is I don't want to pay a number 6 defenseman $4.5 million next year because that's what I think he's going to get on the open market. I thought it was just better to move on from him, and I think that the return they got in this trade was really good. But I also can see it helping Buffalo, right? Like Logan Stanley, it doesn't really matter about the contract next year for him coming in down the stretch here, right? They might not even re-sign him. But I just think it was a hefty price to give up. But I mean, you're in Buffalo's shoes too. It's like you're good, you may as well be a buyer. It's just like the way I'm sort of looking at it is like they went from Parayko to Logan Stanley and Luke Shen. It's kind of like, I don't know. Like, am I totally off with this? Or like, I just more look at it as like they got 2 guys that are probably not even in the lineup every day on most playoff teams. And they got a guy who's, okay, let's call him a solid number 6 defenseman, and he's massive.
Yeah, see, for me, I think Buffalo gave up too much here. It's what you mentioned. You're getting what? You're getting a 6th defenseman, a 7th, and you're giving up a 4th and a 2nd, and one of your top tier prospects. And it's like Stanley, he might not even be back next year if you're Buffalo. Like, you might not even be able to resign the guy. So it's like you go from you're bringing in Parayko to you're bringing in 2 bottom pairing guys essentially. And this is where I think Buffalo had a hard time was with the no move clauses. I feel like Buffalo was maybe looking at and they were like, holy shit, Parayko just moved or didn't waive his no move clause. It's like, we don't want to run out of time because we're just waiting on all these guys to say they'll come to Buffalo. And like, look, to be honest, that's for me, I have Buffalo's as one of my losers of the winners or of the buyers, pardon me, because I think that like I was going into this deadline thinking, man, Buffalo's a fun team. Hopefully they go out and they don't make a splash, but they make somewhat of a big trade, and it might be their year because they're good, and it's going to be better to have like it's going to be a lot easier to bring somebody in and have them maybe waive a no move clause if you're where Buffalo's at right now, right? Compared to where they were at in years past. And then all of a sudden Parayko doesn't waive his, and I'm sitting there going, oh man, like people still don't want to go to Buffalo even when they're the best team in the league since what, December? Like I think they're massive losers just based off of the fact that there's still a lot of people around the league are sitting here going, I still don't want to go to Buffalo even when they're the hottest team in the league. So I'm going to get things started and have them number 1 on my losers out of the buyers mark. Who do you have? Who do you have as some losers for the buyers?
Yeah, I don't even know if that's a tough one because I kind of agree, but like I also am like I don't necessarily know if Logan Stanley's like the wrong person to bring in. It's just more like I'm worried about more of the future, and like it's just the package they gave up I'm just not that comfortable with. But maybe a physical bottom pairing defenseman will help them a lot. Now, I don't know if this surprises you or not. I just think in relative to how much they've been struggling and what they actually need, I think Vegas lost this deadline.
Yeah, I love that take.
Like they brought in Cole Smith and Nick Dowd. They sent out 2 prospects, 2/3 and a 2nd. Now, Vegas has had some problems with depth. Like when we were talking about Washington, I am a fan of Nick Dowd, but I look at Vegas right now and I'm like, they're not really defending that well. To be honest with you, dude, that Rasmus Anderson trade is a fucking fleece. He doesn't look good there at all. I don't think they should re-sign him. Their goaltending's been terrible. They didn't address that in any way. And I'm not saying go out and get Jordan Binnington or fucking Bobrovsky. I'm saying you could have done some sort of minor move that I think would have helped you. And they still lack scoring goals. Nick Dowd and Cole Smith aren't helping your secondary scoring. I just don't know if Vegas really set themselves up for a playoff round against a big team. Or you can even probably say any team right now, considering the way they've been playing against active playoff teams. I'm just really underwhelmed with what they did. I kind of thought after the Smith and Dowd move that something else was coming, but nothing came, dude. Like, am I
Yeah.
off on this totally? Like, I don't know if I'm just very critical of Vegas right now because of how they've been playing recently, but I
It's been
look
all
at them
year
and
though,
it's like,
really.
I don't even consider them a cup contender right now, man.
Yeah, especially in the West. Like, I'll be honest, dude. Like, they're right now going to the playoffs. Vegas, you could argue in the first round, they might even be the underdogs going to that series, depending on how they finish off the season. And then going into the second round, look, if they, whoever they play in the second round, I'm going to have over Vegas 10 times out of 10, most likely. I don't like the look of Vegas right now, and they didn't really do anything, which was very weird to see. Very weird to see. Mark, as my next loser of the buyers, I got the New York Islanders. You gave up a first and a third round pick for for Braden Shen, 30 however year old Braden Shen. Like, look, New York Islanders, you go out and you get the first overall pick last year. You get Matthew Schaefer, right? You look at what they did. You bring in Callum Ritchie, he's playing pretty decent in the NHL right now, and then you get the other two guys that they got in the first round last year. I want to see them build off of that. They're in a playoff position right now, but I think my kind of peeve here with the New York Islanders is it feels like they're rushing things. It feels like all of a sudden because you have Matthew Schaefer, who's having a great rookie season and really having a lot of production, and you got Sorokin in net, who's quite honestly putting band-aids on a lot of issues. It feels like the Islanders are like, yep, we're gonna go out and we're gonna buy a, a centerman in his mid-30s who's not gonna be able to help us in 2 years when Matthew Schaefer's really entering his prime. I don't get this trade whatsoever for the Islanders. For me, the issue wasn't that they were buying, it was the fact that you're giving up a first and third for something that's kind of going to help you in the short term and not help you in the short and long term. What do
Man,
you think
I
about the
am
Islanders
I'm
though?
happy you said that because I felt like I was sort of in the minority on this whole Islander situation. My thing is that I've just really felt that Braden Shen has held a lot more value in this league than I kind of see it from him, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like at times people are almost labeling him as like a top six center. I'm sorry, I don't see that. I think when he gets put into a role to play in a top six position, he's not really producing much offensively, and his defensive game is even kind of suspect at times. I think this is a big price. Now, the one thing I will say is I heard that the third in this deal was to get rid of Drouin's contract. If that's the case, that's even a bigger fail considering they signed him this offseason and that was Darsh's move.
He's got a year left on his deal as well,
Yeah,
I think.
he
No, it's
signed a
like
2x4 this offseason. He didn't score in I think 38 games before he got traded, and then he scored in his first game with the Blues a couple days ago. So that's the one thing I heard. Now, the one thing I will say too is that goalie prospect Marcus Gidloff, I actually think he has potential to be an NHL goalie. I don't think it's like necessarily he's going to be like a stud or anything like that, but if he's a guy in the future that is playing NHL games and even sort of in a 1B backup role, wouldn't surprise me. Now, they do have another guy in the pipeline that's playing in Russia right now that I think they value more. I think his last name's Kuzmin. So I think that probably made it a little bit easier to move off of him. What confused me even more about this trade was, okay, I get what you're saying in like they're rushing things. The way I would counter that is saying they did give up both of these picks were not theirs. One of them was
yeah.
Colorado's they gave up for Nelson. And the other thing I will say is I don't, with Schaefer now, it's like I don't necessarily see them being like drafting in the top 10 anymore unless they
Yeah,
really
neither
do
do
have
I
a disaster of
necessarily.
a season. But I don't mind them giving up the first and the third, I guess is what I'm saying. It's just like I don't get the player and the fit. Because
That's what it is.
the other thing I will say was confused me even more is when this trade happened, I was like, okay, I always try to look at these things through both like views, right? Like we can have our reactions right away, but then obviously even you with Uyghur, like you sit back and kind of think like, okay, what is Conroy actually thinking here? And it's kind of like, okay, we get three more darts at the board within the first 64 picks in this year's draft. He probably sees a lot of value in that. When I looked at it from Darsh, I was like, is Pajot not going to re-sign and this is his replacement? And then hours later, Pajot re-signed. And I'm just like, I personally think that Pajot's a better player. That's just my opinion. I think he does more. I think he wins more faceoffs. He's better defensively. I just kind of think it's like too much of the same now. It's like, I think those guys are solid third line centers. Yeah. And now one of them is going to be playing in the top 6. Meanwhile, you got Barzal, who used to be a center, is now mostly a winger. I don't like when guys are slotted in their positions and it's kind of a little bit too much for them. Like I talked about with Ryan Hartman in Minnesota. I just don't think he's a top 6 center. I don't think Braden Schen's a top 6 center either. So that's the way I would phrase it. I don't mind them giving the picks considering the situation they're in and even going out to get a guy that's cost controlled and not a rental. It's just like, I don't get the Braden Schenn hype, dude. Like that's the one thing that just really confuses me, because I was also looking at it like, bro, everyone's talking about Kadri and getting retention. It's like, I know Schenn is like 2 years younger than Kadri, but I'm like, dude, he makes $500,000 less, and Kadri is a way fucking better player than Braden Schenn. Yep. Like, I'm like, why is no one talking about retention on Braden Schenn? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm overselling this a lot, but I don't love this move for the Islanders, and I think it really pushes them into this window of we're going to start competing, and I don't know if they're ready for that.
Yeah, I think it's like they're going to be competitive, but it's like, hey, I'm not here to watch them. I don't want the Islanders to just be competitive with Matthew Schaefer, right? I want them to build a team around him that's going to get him a Stanley Cup. Right now, the way I'm looking at it, if you're giving up a first and a third for 34-year-old Braden Schenn when you're a wild card team in the East, playing in a, quite frankly, terrible division this year, it's like what are you doing to build a team here around Matthew Schaefer for when he's in his prime? Because Braden
Hear me out. Sorry, I was going to say, hear me out on this. I would have preferred them to attach even a couple more assets, regardless if it's a decent prospect or another pick, and they'd just get Kyrou.
Yeah, or Robert Thomas. Like, I would have way rather that. At least those guys can help you now, but they also kind of fit in your window of when you want to win, right? It's like when the Islanders are going to be competing for a Stanley Cup, Braden Schenn is not going to be on the team. Or if he is, it's going to be after this deal, and he's going to be like 38 years old playing like third, fourth line minutes, right? Like it's just a weird deal. Like it's kind of what you said. Like my issue isn't as much that they gave up a late first round pick and a third round pick. It's more that they gave that up for a 34-year-old guy who's like not really going to be around.
He's a good third line center. Like I don't know. They already have that. Like
just a weird deal. Mark, I want to move on and talk about the losers of the sellers. If you're a loser of the seller, fuck, dude, this is the worst place to be in. Worst place to be in, losers of the sellers. Who's your first team there?
No, I don't want to say that they're the major loser, but one team that pops into my head that I'd probably put up there is Philly. Now, the reason I say this is that I think Philly right now is the perfect example of a team that is in the mushy middle. Yeah. I don't know if there is a more realistic team out there than Philly right now. Because I'll say this. They've got some good players. Like that's not their problem. They've got an abundance of wingers, and I think that's why they decided to move on for Bobby Brink for a defenseman. But my problem is, what's the path for the Flyers right now? Like what are they trying to do? Now, you trade Nick Delorier for a 7th. Okay. Bobby Brink for David Jiricek. Honestly, I don't mind it, but I will say if I was on Philly's side of this, I'd be looking to get like a mid-round pick with that. I don't think I would do that 1-for-1. I'm also on the side of I actually don't believe that David Jiricek's going to have a long NHL career at this point. I'm just very skeptical of how he's developed, and it's just been very, very rough for him. That I would have Honestly, if it was like Juracek and a third for Bobby Brink, I think I'd be fine with that. I just would be more comfortable with another asset, considering that Bobby Brink is an NHLer right now that is making impact, and David Juracek, it's still a bit of a question mark, regardless of where he was picked in the draft. I don't really hate the trade that much. It's more like, buddy, you bring in David Juracek, okay? You're trying to get younger. Why don't you trade Rasmus Ristolainen? Give David Juracek a shot in the NHL. You're probably not going to make the fucking playoffs this year again, and you're going to be picking 11th to 15th overall most likely, and you're going to get a player that, I mean, I don't know, they've been fucking reaching the past couple of years early in the draft to the point where I don't even know if these players like Luchenko and Nesbitt are going to be top 6 forwards for you in the future. I just have a problem with them committing to a lane, because it's like, honestly, dude, if they went out at this deadline and traded a top prospect and got Robert Thomas, I would be like, okay, you know what? They're probably not going to make the playoffs this year, but they filled a glaring hole that they don't have on their team right now, or even within their development system, a first line center, that it would be like, all right, we're kind of pushing for something. He's under cost control. He's going to be our first line center moving forward. We can continue to add off of this. But I don't know if they're trying to get better. Are they trying to get worse? I don't understand what's happening with the Flyers right now. And if I was their fans, I would be fucking pissed off, because they're not, it's like their coach is saying one thing, their management is saying something else. I don't understand what's going on with this team. And honestly, I don't, I'm on the side now, dude, where I'm not convinced that Briere's doing that great of a job.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, Philly, it's as you said, man. They're in the mushy middle, and it's like, where are you going? I like they do have some decent prospects maybe on the way up, and they are still a young team, right? So they couldn't prove, but it does feel like that they are, as you said, just picking 11 to 15th, and you're gonna have to wait for some of these guys. I would like to see them maybe make a little bit more moves. Like, look, I'll be honest, it seems like ever since like the Cutter Gauthier thing happened, Philly just has been kind of just stuck on like, oh, we'll finish anywhere from just outside the playoffs to just outside bottom 10 in the league, and we just won't really do anything. And we've said it time and time again, like, look, it's the worst place to be in, because you're just going to be picking these guys who are going to help you out, but not have crazy impacts or be like first line players or superstar players. And then all of a sudden, you're in this loop of doing it for the next 10 years, right? And if you don't break that loop, you're going to be absolutely fucked. And I think for Philly, it's kind of horrendous with where they're at right now. Mark, any
I'm
other?
very, I was just say, I'm
Go
just
ahead.
very skeptical of everything they're doing now, because it's not like some of these players can't become NHL players. It's just like, what are they going to do? Just come in and replace the old wave of like abundance of wingers that they have right now? Like, I don't understand. Man, to be honest with you, like, there's been rumors about Owen Tippett for some time. And I know he's having a great year
Yeah.
this year, but it's also like, if you don't realistically see him in your plans moving forward, like, why don't you, like, buddy, you're telling me at this deadline, the Flyers couldn't have got like a first round pick and a prospect and probably something else for Owen Tippett? Like, dude, the guy signed at 6 more years for $6 million. Like, I think they probably could have got a premium for him. You can't tell me at this deadline Rasmus Anderson wasn't going to go for a first round pick if they put him on the market. Like
Yeah.
the way that Justin Falk went, you know what I mean? Like, I think they definitely could have got a good return for him. And it's like the fans probably just want it. Like, everything I'm reading with their fans is just like, it's just like pick a lane. It's like this whole Michkov Talkit thing, and then the organization like saying, yeah, we're retooling, and then it's like, but we're also kind of going for it. The one thing I will say with them, I think 2 out of the last 3 seasons, it's just honestly been unfortunate for the franchise that they started so well every year and was like in the playoffs for the first 40 to 50 games of the season and gave them this hope, and then they've just sort of been fizzling out and getting worse as the season goes on and misses the playoffs. Like, I think they're just getting a bunch of false hope from their players, and they just can't consistently be at a high level the entire season.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best trade deadline for them. Moving on to my next loser of the sellers mark, I got the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think they had a great deadline here. this is a team right now that there's a lot of talk. Are you guys going to be retooling for next season, or do we go through a full rebuild? I look at this and I say, I don't care what you're doing next year. You sent out so many assets within the past 9 years of making the playoffs with this Leafs core that you completely gutted the cupboards. You got nothing left in there, not even crumbs. You don't even have crumbs in there right now, right? And for the first time in 9 years, you decide at the deadline, we're not making the playoffs. We're gonna need to go the selling route. Dude, all they got back was a first, second, third, fourth, and not even all this year. You like what here's my question. If the Leafs are gonna rebuild next year, the picks that they got back, what are you gonna do with those picks that's gonna make you a contender all of a sudden next year? Like what are you gonna do? Like you're telling me that with those picks, you can flip those picks into players that's going to make you contender next year? God, no. God, no. Look, I think the Leafs, they didn't get enough back for the players that they shipped off. And then I think there's also players that had value that they probably should have shipped off that they didn't ship off. Like OEL, he's what? He's a 35-year-old defenseman having a career year right now. I get that maybe you want to be competitive next year if you're the Leafs, but is OEL even going to be having the year he's having next year? And if he's not, like, why didn't you trade him right now when you could have probably gotten a pretty decent return for him?
Yeah, everything I heard is it never got close with OEL. Like they were asking for a lot for him, man.
I wonder if it never got close though, because they only started fucking negotiating Wednesday night. Like,
What I was hearing was it was a first, a second, and a prospect. I don't know how good of a prospect they were anticipating coming back. Look, the way I see it with OEL is, look, I think he's having a very good year in Toronto, just especially considering how the team's been playing. Like he's probably been their best defenseman the entire season. But the way I'm looking at it is a team he's going to that's going to be competitive. He's not going to be their best defenseman. And you can say all you want about how good offensively he's been. He has been pretty bad defensively most of the year. And I think that was kind of set some teams off in the sense that it's not that he can't play in the playoffs and be good. I mean, the guy won a Stanley Cup a couple of years ago, but I just think for that price, teams were very weary of bringing in a guy like that, considering that he was probably going to be like a number 4 or 5 guy on most of these
yeah,
teams that he would have been traded to, right? So I think that's a little bit much of a price for OEL, considering like Justin Falks didn't even end up going for that either, right? I agree. That was the one thing about the Leafs is that I like the Nick Waugh return. I have no
that's
problem
a
getting a
great
first and a
return.
fifth for Nick Waugh. I think that was a really solid return. If we're nitpicking stuff, the Scott Lawton deal, yeah, I don't love a conditional third for a depth centerman that they overpaid for last year. I could be totally off on this. I would have honestly probably just kept them and try to re-sign them and just have them for the rest of the year for the vibes and try to at least make it good around the dressing room. The Bobby McMahon, it's not a terrible return. The way I looked at it, though, in comparison is I think he's a better player than Kiefer Sherwood. I know Sherwood is a bit different and he's more physical. He scores a lot of goals, but to be fair, Sherwood went on a tear at the beginning of the year and then has come back down to normal, right?
Yeah,
So I just more see it as I think Bobby McMahon even holds a little bit more value than him. I was expecting 2 second-round picks in return for Bobby McMahon. That didn't happen. I think Seattle, I mean, it's another middle six winger for them, but it's also a low-risk pickup for them as well. So I don't necessarily love the Leafs deadline overall. The one thing, too, some people highly disagree with me on this. I would have put a goalie out there and been very willing to move one,
same.
in the sense that, I mean, Wall's having a pretty solid year, I think. Stolarz, it's obviously a bit of a down year. Regardless of that, you can't tell me that no one would trade for Stolarz. Like
Yeah,
3.75 mil for 4 year, that's a very manageable cap hit, even for a guy that's going to be your 1B. And people are probably saying, well, you need goalies for next year. Well, Dennis Hildeby's going through waivers next year. So the way I'm kind of seeing this now is, okay, so are they going to play this out until September and then realize, oh shit, we're going to have 3 goalies and then trade one then? Like, you're not really dealing from a position of strength when you're in that position, right? Like maybe you're getting like a mid-round pick for a guy and you could have got a little bit more for him now, right?
yeah,
Like I would have even dangled, like one of the rumors I saw out there, and I don't know how legit this was, and I actually thought if you could make this work in some way, it would work for both teams, and maybe there'd have to be another asset. I saw Joseph Woll for Owen Tippett.
That name
Flyers
is
need another
familiar.
goalie. Flyers need another goalie. Leafs need speed, youth, potential top six forward. Now, you can sit here and say, oh, well, this team wouldn't do that. That team wouldn't do that. I'm not saying the deal is going to be one for one. I just saw as a hypothetical, like, I wouldn't have minded that if I was the Leafs. Even if
Yeah.
you're not getting a pick, it's like he's under cost control. It's something that you need, right? You're also dealing it from a position of strength that you've got a young goalie. Like Hildeby was debatably their best goalie this season.
I think
So
I
that
saw
was
some.
more something I was interested in for the Leafs. Like, I was like, are they going to do
Yeah.
this? Like, even though it's not like go out and get an asset, it's like with the Leafs now, too. I don't know if you heard Tree Living on Kiprios' show. Like, buddy, he was saying we will have a plan. Like, they don't even have a plan right now. Like, I don't know what they're doing. I agree with you. Like, this first and second round pick aren't in 2026. So are you waiting till then to draft these with these picks, or are you hoping that you're going to be competitive next year, almost pull like a Boston and then go out and use these picks to trade for someone?
But
Like, obviously they're not going to reveal their cards, but it's like, I'm just very weary of what is actually going on with Toronto right now and what they want to do.
and here's my thing about the rebuild, dude, is when you look at Boston and the trades they made last season, or not the rebuild, the retooling, it's like, what did you get back? You brought in players that can play now who have upside. The Leafs didn't do that. They didn't bring back any players that have upside that can also play in your lineup right now. And on top of that, you didn't get good picks back. Like Boston, look at the picks that they got back last year. You got back Fraser Minton, Casey Middlestad, right? Like
Marat
these are guys that
Husnudinov.
are having an impact on Boston this season, while you also got the assets and the picks back. For the Leafs, you didn't get any players near what Boston got back last season, and the picks aren't as good either. It's like, what do you expect is going to happen next year? Do you think you're going to turn? You think you're going to turn a first round pick, Colorado's first round pick, by the way, which is going to be fucking 32nd overall? You think you're going to turn that into a top six winger that can play with Austin Matthews every night, or a second line centerman that you need? Like, you're not like the Leafs did not do enough to kind of rebuild their assets to be able to flip all that to be able to contend next season. And if you're not doing that, then you should be selling off more and trading the OELs and some of the guys that do have value. I just think I just think the Leafs waited way too long to decide if they were going to be buyers or sellers, and then by the time they decided that they were going to be sellers, it was like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
It was very weird.
Yeah, they're not in a great position, dude, right now. I think it's very up in the air. But I also wonder, like, the way Tree Living was talking is like he doesn't seem very confident. He might not even like be employed by this team in a couple months from now, right? And you never really know what's going on in that aspect. But yeah, I think they were just very reluctant to. I think as the season went on, it was kind of like, okay, we're starting bad. We start bad usually, and then it was kind of like I feel like for probably about 2 months, it was almost like we'll figure it out, and they just didn't figure it out. And then it got so late that, look, the one thing I will say is, like, if they didn't go on a 3-game slide out of the Olympic break, I mean, it's been a lot more than that at this point, but if you win those 3 games, like, they're in a completely different position, right? Like, they
Yeah.
could be like Columbus right now or Washington, where it's like you're just outside, right? And it might be worth to try and get in. But I think just the slide they've been on, how bad they've been, it would have been a lot better to kind of restock the shelves. Like, even one thing I wondered about, dude, was like, okay, so for instance, like, they get a third rounder for Scott Lawton. I know that's kind of like near the end of the deadline, but like, to be honest, like, I would have like got that pick and then like called Winnipeg about Brad Lambert and seeing if you can get him for like a third round pick, bring him in for the rest of the season, see if he's
Yeah.
got a shot. Maybe he's playing good and maybe he's an option for you next season. That I would have preferred much to be more creative like that and try something like that.
Yeah, I think it was just they waited way too long to do anything. Mark, I want to before we wrap up the show here, I know we each got a big kind of hard-hitting question for each other, so I'll let you go first and ask me your question first.
So, Pascal, my question to you is about the what happened in the Minnesota-Colorado game last night. Because some people were just talking about it, and it's not like this hasn't happened before. But Nathan MacKinnon got a penalty with 1 minute and 3 seconds left in OT. The game ended up going to a shootout. They didn't score, and then MacKinnon ended up scoring in the shootout to win it for Colorado. Now, some people are saying, and you might be on the side of, he shouldn't be allowed to shoot in the shootout because he still had time left on his penalty. I know the rule is if you have a misconduct, like a 10-minute, you can't shoot. So that was why MacKinnon ended up shooting. So my question to you is, I heard this hypothetical, and I'm actually very interested in this. People were talking about extending overtime to 10 minutes. As a compromise, so MacKinnon takes a penalty with 1 minute and 3 seconds left in OT. What about just going the full 2 minutes of the power play? Like, OT does not end until that 2-minute power play is over. Once that penalty is over, the buzzer goes and the overtime is over. So you get the actual 2-minute power play out of it. So not just in these situations, it's like every situation. 30 seconds left, you take a penalty, you're still getting that 2-minute power play, even though there's 30 seconds left on the clock. I just thought that was an interesting proposition if they aren't going to compromise and extend overtime.
Yeah, I think that would actually be very interesting. I would like to see it, dude. I think it would, first of all, it would help with games being more entertaining in overtime, right? Because overtime already, it's not really the greatest hockey we're seeing. It's like if a team has a power play, 45 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever it is, and the game gets pushed that extra time frame to be able to hopefully see a goal and not a shootout. I think it would work great because look, right now, like shootouts, they're not fun to watch. We don't really want to see them. Like I think the whole pushing overtime to 10 minutes, I don't want to see personally, just because the 3-on-3 overtime already isn't really the most enjoyable, and I don't really know if I need to see 10 minutes of it. But I think, man, if you're in the penalty box at the end of overtime, then keep it going and keep it going until they're out, and then have the buzzer go. I actually like that rule a fair bit.
Yeah, it's like when there's a whistle and there's 1 minute and 3 seconds left, it's just a known thing. You move the clock back up to 2 minutes. I mean, if there's a goal, the
Yeah,
game's over. If not, I mean, there'll be no complaints about MacKinnon being able to shoot in the shootout if that's the case,
yeah,
right? And I kind of agree. I like 10 minutes. I mean, a lot of people want to see it. The one thing I will say is it's going to put a lot of wear and tear on the players playing that extra time. Also, with like the 84 game season coming into effect next year too, I think it might just be more of like, dude, we're already seeing so many guys injured this year as well, right? Like, I just don't think that that's a realistic possibility. But I just thought, hey, like, this isn't going to happen all the time. It's going to happen sometimes. And I mean, it's probably happened even more this year than we thought. But I think it would be pretty entertaining, and it would force teams, like, even when there's 10 seconds left, like, don't go and fucking slash that guy as hard as you can
yeah.
to like get the puck. And even if you're going to take a penalty, it's almost like a huge consequence if you take a penalty with like 9 seconds left in the game.
Yeah, no, I think it would definitely make things interesting in overtime. Mark, my question for you, you already kind of answered the one I had, so I had to switch it up last minute. But my question for you is, if the Toronto Maple Leafs finish with a top five pick, which is what they need to be able to hold on to theirs, will they make the selection or will they use it as trade bait? What are you leaning towards?
I think it definitely depends on what's available at the time. I'm going to guess that they do not trade it, though, because I think that they probably want to get some more youth into their system, and especially like a guy that can be an impact player on an entry level contract. It is definitely possible, though. You never
Yeah.
know. Like, maybe they do really like a Rob Thomas, and that fifth overall pick and entices St. Louis a ton. You know what I mean? In accordance to that, you don't have to give up a lot of other assets on top of that to get a player like that to come in. So I think it definitely depends on the market at the time. But I think right now, like, we're talking about the Leafs not having a great pipeline, and I'm sure that they probably want to make that better.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what fans are saying about it, because some fans are like, "Oh no, if we keep our top five pick this year, trade it for Robert Thomas or some go out and get Adam Fox, right?" And then others are like, "No, no, make that pick. Let's go to the rebuild. Get rid of everybody and get the rebuild going." So, wanted to see what your perspective was on it. overall, though, that's going to wrap up today's episode. We covered a fair bit here with the trade deadline and all the trades that went on this past Friday. We'll be back next weekend, next Monday. So everybody stay tuned for next Monday, and thanks for tuning in.